everyone watching at home. We are Adelaide Eternal. We're bringing you our monthly tournament. This one is Legacy, and we are here. You're here with Sarven McLinton, and I have Beckett Wolfe next to me.
G'day, guys.
So this matchup is a combo matchup. We have Sara Davey on the right, and she's on Goblin Charbelcher, and affectionately known as Belcher. And then on the left we have Michael Taylor, and he's on a traditional Ant Storm deck. So if we just look at Belcher first, because this is one that people won't be as familiar with, unlike Storm. So Belcher's all about free mana, and using those free mana spells or abilities to power out things that cost 1 mana. And the 1 mana rituals power out 2 mana rituals, and so on and so forth. So the free mana is Elvish Spirit Guide, Simian Spirit Guide. They give you a red or a green when you exile them. And there's also things like Land Grant just to get your 1 land in the deck, which is a Tiger, or the Chrome Moxen or Lion's Eye Diamond is really used to activate the Belcher, so you can't really power anything out from that on the first turn, as the first piece of mana. And then your other clever little rituals are things like Tinder Wall, which is kind of like a 1 mana ritual. It's a 1 mana green ritual that gives you red. So yeah, it's quite interesting. There's a whole bunch of free spells like
it's a bit like Oops all spells.
Yeah,
it's only got the 1 land, and
it's that single Tiger. And once you land grant that out of the deck, basically, when you activate the namesake of the deck, Goblin Charbelcher, you'll deal a large amount of damage to your opponent. So the Lion's Eye Diamonds are almost always there solely to pay 3 to activate the Goblin Charbelcher. But there are strange things that can happen. There's a second game plan for Belcher, and that is if the Goblin Charbelcher plan fails, or you don't actually draw the Belcher, or they have a Pithing Needle naming Belcher, for example, you can just Storm for maybe 5 or 6 spells, including an Empty Valorian.
That's right. It's got all the great spells that are used in Storm matchups. So
yeah,
probably not going to be a very interactive game because Michael Taylor is on Ant Storm. Ant Storm is not called Ant Storm because it runs. What's that? Army of ants?
Release the ants.
Release the ants.
And what you do is you have 4 release the ants, and then you have tutors to find release the ants.
You storm out. You
have a spell that gives target spell Storm, and you can release the ants.
That's
it's
not what it is.
And as in ad nauseum tendrils. So
ad nauseum and tendrils.
Yeah, exactly. So it's actually quite an outdated name, but people still call it ant because nowadays you really just only run 1 ad nauseum and 1 tendrils. Obviously, the namesake of the deck for ant. But the key parts of the deck are Lion's Eye Diamond, Lotus Petal, Dark Ritual. These kind of ritual spells, and then obviously the other half of the keys of the deck are the probes, brainstorms, ponders, preordains, those types of cards. You have duress and cabal therapy just to protect your combo because you're not a force of will deck, and you do have certain lines that involve infernal tutoring for Passion Flames so that you can flash back your graveyard again to get a critical mass of Storm. So if you've never played against Ant before, and you don't have a deck that runs Force of Will, Daze, Therapy, or Thoughtseize, Hymn to Turak, then basically just shuffle your cards up. You're going to be going to game 2. They will consistently kill you on turn 2.
Yeah, I've played a bit of Ant myself, but I've never seen Reign of Filth.
Reign of Filth is gas. So this is often like a Dark Ritual. It's like an additional Dark Ritual, and if you could run 5 Dark Ritual, you would. And what it does is it says 1 mana, lands you control can be sacrificed to add 1 black. So you're going to go off on turn 3, you're going to sacrifice all 3 of those lands for black. It's basically like a 1 mana dark. It's the same as Dark Ritual.
That's right. I really like that card. Do you want to get down to the game?
Sounds good. So this is going to be a very die roll dependent game. If Michael Taylor is on the play, it allows him to leverage duress. in this matchup, when you're on Belcher, you actually don't really have much in the way of interaction. Your goal really here is to go crazy off on turn 1. In fact, Belcher consistently turn 1 wins far more than Ant does. And that's the ideal aspect of the deck. The issue with Belcher is the fact that when your opponent has Force of Will, you cry. Because you can Force of Will the critical ritual to prevent the Storm goblins, or you can Force of Will the Belcher itself. However, for Ant, because you have Duress and Cabal Therapy, you can really play through the hate of a control deck.
Yeah, look, as I said, I've played a bit with Ant, and it can win turn 2, but there's often no reason to, like unless...
Yeah.
Obviously against Belcher, that's a different story because they can win, but, if you're playing against like a Goif deck or something, there's no reason to try to go off that
Wait
early.
an extra turn.
So, and your land drops aren't spells, and obviously you want to be generating your mana from stuff like Dark Ritual to feed the Storm count, but I always felt pretty comfortable having 3 lands out, and I always liked hitting my 3rd land drop and then going off on the 3rd turn with a Duress.
So that hand looks like it's got a Chrome Mox, Elvish Spirit Guide.
And the Tiger, the one Tiger.
And the Tiger, yeah, so she's got a lot of mana. There's a bunch of cards in that hand.
Does Michael know what she's on? That's a big difference.
I believe they do. I believe they both know each other is on an explosive match.
Well, he's now going to definitely know.
Yes. So here we go. We see a lovely hand set out here. This is basically all in on Burning Wish, because there's no payoff spell in this hand. It's all mana, right?
Yeah, that's right. Burning Wish, really good spell. It's a sorcery that lets you search your sideboard for other sorcery cards. So what's she got in the sorcery that she's looking for?
So you can usually get the 4th Empty the Warrens this way. So there is a way to get it, but there's also cool little things you can do, like get Tendrils of Agony. So if she has enough not Chrome Moxen, so how does she generate black? Maybe
she's got Lotus Petal.
Manamorphose. You can Manamorphose into double black, and Lines Like Diamond into triple black. So you can definitely cast Tendrils. So you can go for an additional type of storm that's not Empty the Warrens.
That's right. But Cabal Therapy there, naming Burning, seems pretty good. So.
Yeah, the combo of Gataxian Probe, Cabal Therapy is not to be understated.
Especially against a deck like this. Obviously, hand hate is fantastic. So, but Michael also needs to formulate his own plan.
Definitely. So he is under pressure because any top deck here from Sara can sculpt a beautiful hand. So if she drew either another Burning Wish or an Empty the Warren. So here we go. We've got he's choosing between more hand sculpting or tutoring. But no land. So it just depends on whether or not
we don't know what's in his hand. As I said, I like having that 3rd mana.
Yes.
So I'm not sure what he's got, but he's elected to draw Infernal Tutor, and then he's got Preordain. So maybe he wants to Preordain because
Preordain next turn, and then keep sculpting. What he needs to find are rituals, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I don't see many rituals in the hand. So for those who haven't played Ant before, Ant needs a critical mass. So you can have a hand with a lot of storm, i.e. a lot of preordains and ponders, but not enough rituals. So you can't generate the mana that you need to actually cast Tendrils of Agony. Or you can go the other way around. You can have a whole bunch of rituals, but you don't have the payoff spell. So you could have a hand full of 6 rituals. That's great. But you don't have either the Tendrils of Agony or the Infernal Tutor for more Infernal Tutors to get Tendrils of Agony or Past in Flames. The deck has to get all of them, so it needs to spend a little bit of time sculpting a hand. You can't always just get the nut draw.
Yeah, and he's only got 1 Dark Petition, which is what he's sunk, and I think that's correct. When I played my list, I actually had 1 Dark Petition. When that card first came out, everyone was going crazy for it because they thought, this is Demonic Tutor. And it essentially is. It's 5 mana, search for a card, and then you get 3 black back, basically always. If you have Spell Mastery, technically, but basically you always get it.
The difference
it was just not as good as you'd think, because I think 1 is still good, but first of all, Demonic Tutor isn't as good in Legacy as it is in Vintage, because the cards in Vintage that you're searching for are so much better. But also that to do it, you basically have to Dark Ritual And if you Dark Ritual, then you're losing card advantage or you're forced to go off that turn. And so many times when you're playing Storm or any combo deck or any deck in Vintage and you want a Demonic Tutor, you can Demonic Tutor this turn, set up next turn. But if you're doing it this way, you have to, okay, this is the turn. I start with Demonic Tutor and then I go off. And if they counter the Dark Petition, then you're really in a bad place. It also forces you to have triple black in a list that maybe you might want the blue or the red. So,
and this is why the deck still always has and always will pretty much run 4 of the Infernal Tutor. So you've noticed that people tried to jam lots of Dark Petitions, but in reality, you still just want 4 Infernal Tutor, because there are times where you go, well, on my turn, I'm going to use 2 mana. I'm just going to Infernal Tutor. I'm going to reveal Lion's Eye Diamond.
Well, you want 4 Lion's Eye Diamond. Like, that's what you want Infernal Tutor, not because Infernal Tutor is good, but because Lion's Eye Diamond is good.
Yeah.
And you could take out the Infernal Tutors and put in Dark Petitions, but then your Lion's Eye Diamonds become pretty bad. So
there's a very good feeling to...
He does have both here, though, and we're about to see this combo. And for those of you who don't know the combo that well or haven't played against Storm, obviously the combo is Tendrils, but this is the real way to A, generate a huge amount of mana, and B, generate or search your library for the key cards. You'll notice it only runs 1 ad nauseum, and this is the way it finds it.
So you place this spell on the stack, retain priority, activate Lion's Eye Diamond to discard your hand. Now this turns into an actual Demonic Tutor.
And you'll notice he's got Past in Flames in the hand, which he's discarded. Past in Flames gives all your spells flashback. Now, unfortunately for Michael, he doesn't have many Dark Rituals, but it does not require too many Dark Rituals for you to just generate a huge amount of mana, and then...
So do you just DT here for, or IT, Infernal Tutor for Dark Ritual?
Well, then
you just cast the Dark Ritual,
and then you
cast
in Flames.
Past in Flames, then you cast a Dark Ritual.
That's again. A really good point, Sar. Most of the time, when I've played it, I don't have the Past in Flames in hand, because what are the chances of that? It only runs 1, and you wait till you've got a few Dark Rituals or Cabal Rituals, and then you actually don't search for the Tendrils, because you'll notice your Storm count isn't high enough. It's only at 2. So you search for the Past in Flames. And searching for the Past in Flames is just a bit of dilly-dallying around to increase your Storm count. Yeah. You probably don't need the mana, and you could have searched for Tendrils, but you need to go Past in Flames and just dilly-dally around, cast a few Brainstorms, cast a few Gitaxian Probes, cast a Cabal Ritual, make sure the way is clear, and then Dark Ritual, and then Infernal Tutor for the Tendrils, and now your Storm count's large enough to do it.
And so when you're running Ant, what you need to do is identify what your hand needs or what's lacking, and this is what people often forget to do. You can get Cabal Ritual here as well. I think this is ballsy.
This is the opposite of what Sarv's done, because
you can have a deterministic win because you've already got a tutor in the graveyard.
It seems good because he's got 3 black floating and 2 lands, and he can search for
just get Cabal Ritual or Dark Ritual, some kind of ritual. Get a bunch of mana, then cast Past in Flames, flash it back, flash back the ritual again, and then you've got a
I like Sarv's way better, because I think maybe Michael hasn't realised that his Past in Flames is in the bin, and that the Past in Flames gives him gas. So Ad Nauseam, right, is an amazing spell, but it is very mana intensive, and it just gives you a huge amount of card advantage. Like, you just keep going. You just fill your hand up. But
so what we were saying before was...
As Sav said, do you need that?
Identify what your hole is, and in the hand, the hole was mana. So if you IT'd for ritual, so I said Dark Ritual, could be Cabal Ritual, just some kind of ritual. So let's say Cabal Ritual, because then you do have Threshold. You cast it, you get additional mana, then you flash back from the graveyard, Past in Flames, then you cast Cabal Ritual again, and generate a large amount of mana. Then you cast the tutor in the graveyard, and that still has Spell Mastery, and get some more mana back. And then you will have generated a decent amount of Storm, and you could say, empty the Warrens. Oh no, you won't have enough red. So you could say, just flash back Cabal Therapy to use a bit of mana. You will have an additional blue mana, cast a Ponder, find a Lotus Petal, play the Lotus Petal, and then that should get you to the right Storm count to Tendrils for the win.
Guys, if that was too fast, feel free to rewind. But in all seriousness, though, that's like it's a really good point. I think the basics of what Sarv is saying is really true. Identify
Just know the opening,
what your weaknesses is. Now, there's a very skill-intensive deck, and it's very difficult to play. And here's another really important and enjoyable skill is deciding when to stop ad nauseam.
Yes, very much
so. What Michael's doing now is he's flipping cards on the top of his library. Ad nauseam says you can keep doing this, but you lose a life for the converted mana cost of the cards that you take. But you can do it one at a time. So if he flips a Preordain next, he'll take another life go to 4. But you can keep doing that. What he's worried about is you could kill yourself. Yeah. Now, I think he's okay to keep going here because he has to win this turn. The only 5 is Dark Petition, and that's gone. And then the other 4...
So this is a worrying spot.
Well, the only other 4 is Tendrils?
Yeah.
Empty the Warrens if he runs at main board.
Empty the Warrens is already there, so it's basically Tendrils.
It's Tendrils, because Past in Flames is gone.
Yeah, this is good. Getting an extra mana source is very good. So the previous play that I was talking about is kind of
now
like
he doesn't have the mana.
Yeah, the previous play I was talking about is kind of a deterministic win because you basically know what you're getting. When you cast Ad Nauseam, there's like a 80% chance that you win because you could just get enough to win.
You know what I think?
There's a 20% chance you lose because you just don't get the right cards or you flip the wrong cards and choose not to stop at the right time.
So he can Lion's Eye Diamond here and go crack it and play
Lotus Petal as well.
Yeah, and now he plays Dark Ritual now.
Yeah,
and then cracks it and Past in Flames, and then he gets to Ritual again.
But you've already Past in Flame. Oh no, you haven't.
He hasn't Past in Flames.
Sorry, that was the one.
Oh, but he doesn't. But is he still?
No, you have enough mana.
He'll have 1, 2, 3 from Ritual, and then crack Lion's Eye Diamond. Past in Flames flashback costs 5. He'll have 3 off Ritual, but he won't have enough mana. I think he needed to keep ad nauseaming, find another Dark Ritual. If he finds one more Dark Ritual, he's got the mana. But
yeah, this is
that's not where you want to be at.
The bad spot to be in to be brainstorming.
Because now again he's spending mana for cards.
So what we were saying before, that you've identified your opening, your weakness here, and the weakness is that you don't have rituals, you don't have enough mana. Does find a Rain of Filth. Rain of Filth is very good here. So,
but he needs another pedal. Because he has to discard it to LED.
Yeah, that's a bad spot to be in. So like we were saying, when you cast Ad Nauseam and you have an 80% chance of winning, but there's always a 20% chance that you don't.
Yeah, but he was tapped out as well. Like, you don't really have very far to go. And this is another good point about patience. I don't think this is the right matchup to be patient, but you'll notice Michael's got 4 lands out, and he wants more mana. So having lands and having land drops is actually still pretty relevant even in a Storm matchup. But he surely can't win now, right? I mean,
not with the combination of cards that he flipped. So there was a world where Ad Nauseam flips off a bunch of Lion's Eye Diamonds, Lotus Petals, and Dark Rituals, and all of that, and it gets exactly what you need. But there's always a chance.
Yeah, I think he was too scared of Tendrils. Like, how many cards are left in his deck? It's that many, like 1 in that many chance that he loses to Tendrils, and a really good chance that he hits 3 Dark Rituals which were left in the deck.
On the other hand, he passes the turn here. He has a graveyard that's amazing because it's full of Past in Flames and things to flash back, and he has a hand that is amazing. So the issue here is if Sara can just Belcher off here, it's GG.
Yeah, but she hasn't Belchered, and Michael's got a chance of redemption here.
So
gets his land drop.
Hitting land drops and shuffling is always good. So he can Gataxian probe exactly 1 time now. Because you're not going to probe the mana.
Yeah, look, Ad Nauseam's fantastic, but you do have to be careful. That's another really good point. Is I've definitely misplayed and calculated my Ad Nauseam, thinking I was doing it correctly with my Past in Flames, and then being like, yeah, and then I just probe 4 times. It doesn't work.
Okay, so Storm count is 1.
There's Dark Ritual and Probe.
Well, this is that's
and another Probe.
Yeah,
which the second probe's not going to be.
Second probe does nothing, but Ritual's very good here.
Mana for it though.
He needed Ritual. Good. So you just go put 1 probe on top, then you go Ritual, then go other probe, and then you just probe. The other probe's in your hand, so then you just probed into the Ritual. Sorry, it's Brainstorm. He just puts back 2 bad cards and goes off. So he's definitely looking for something. The question is, what is he looking for? So
Tendrils.
Well, you can actually look for tendrils itself, but the issue here is you have Past in Flames, and you also have a graveyard
with infernal
tutors and stuff. So
right.
so
what
is
he looking for? He's just looking for Storm.
Yeah, you don't
really
need to do it.
Yeah, I think he's just one.
You just need rituals anyway. So
I think he's trying to utilize the cards in his hand while he's got them, but the truth is he doesn't need them.
Yeah.
He needs a ritual.
He's got rituals and he's got Rain of Filth.
He's got 2 rituals now.
Yeah.
That's all he needs. 2 rituals and Rain is fine. So he's got this game.
So he has 3 black mana in the mana pool. Storm counters 3. He's using another ritual. So this is 5 black mana in the mana pool. Storm counters 4. And it's pretty much a deterministic line from here.
Yeah, might as well throw in a...
You can just probe. Boost that Storm count, and then just flash back the... I don't think you need to use mana here for Brainstorm, because you can just flash back the Past in Flames. You've actually got a deterministic win here.
So pretty superfluous. And this is a Brainstorm as well, so it goes to your hand. Lotus Petal, sure.
Yeah,
I guess that means the Brainstorm.
Yeah, you've netted the same amount of mana and increased the Storm count by 2.
Okay, here we go. He's just got to pucker up and crack that LED, and so he's got heaps. He's got 5 black. The
other reason that you don't cast Brainstorm is it taps your red source, which is not ideal. It means you have to crack LED for red, and that's no fun. But you can crack Lotus Petal, so that's also fine. So Sara has been very unlucky in this situation because her deck is designed to go off on turn 1, and unfortunately, all it took was 1 Cabal Therapy that took out her business spell, and she wasn't able to leverage all of those tutors, all of those rituals. So her deck's really explosive, but it was a bit fragile.
Yeah, a little bit. Cast Rain of Filth here. Be interesting to see. I don't think he needs to be... I guess, there's a lot of lines. You got so much gas, and you've just got so many cards in hand, so much mana.
Yeah. So he's just doing the simple one here. Doesn't even need Past in Flames.
So he's cracked the LED, which means he has to discard.
So discards his hand, goes for Tendrils, sacrifices his lands, and uses the 2 floating black and his Tendrils.
Yeah, that'll do it.
And that's GG's. So like I said in that one, Sara did get unlucky because when you see the Belcher deck go off, it goes off, and it goes off consistently on turn 1. It's kind of crazy. And that's all it takes. It takes a single Cabal ritual, a Cabal Therapy that can really disrupt it.
Was he counting his Storm, or his black mana and a Swamp? Okay, that's alright. I like that.
So in terms of sideboard, we have... with Sara's deck, obviously, we were saying that there's a couple of things that you can tutor out with the Burning Wish, and some of them do want to stay in the sideboard, like the Tendrils of Agony, for example. But she's got some, and Reforge the Soul is also a good tutor target because you don't really want to ever draw that card, right? But when you really, really, really need to discard your hand and draw 7, then you can Burning Wish.
Is that a miracle?
It's a miracle. It's a miracle spell, right? But Wheel of Fortune isn't legal in this format, so
that's true.
But here, you don't bring in Xanted Swarm because there's no counter spells from an Ant deck, but you do have Pyroblast, and there is a question here about bringing in Pyroblast just to deny your opponent brainstorms and ponders, because sometimes it's enough.
I don't think that's where you want to be, though.
It's possible that for her deck, she literally stays identical.
Yeah, because she just wants to be fast.
She's going to be on the play.
She wants to be faster than him, and she could still lose. Storm could just win. Storm could just be like, oh, I've got Lotus Petal, Lion's Eye Diamond. I've just got all the business spells. Like, I don't need to Brainstorm and Preordain.
Yeah. So then in terms of Storm, when you're storming off, obviously it's really nice to be on the play with Duress and Cabal Therapy. But in this matchup, if your opponent doesn't kill you on turn 1, you generally are going to not really try and pull their hand apart that much. So just thoughts on changing your sideboard too much, because a lot of the time people with gusto jam in Duress and Cabal Therapy in this matchup, for example, going, well, I'm going to disrupt you. But if you're on the draw, it's just going to be a dead card that doesn't let you storm off.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when you're playing such a tight list as these two guys, and they just need that critical mass, as you say.
So he's taken out 2 preordains, and he's brought in Cabal Therapy and Duress. So it's exactly what we were talking about just then.
Yeah.
So I like doing that. What he did there, 2 preordains out and 2 Duress and Cabal Therapy in when you're on the play. But because you're on the draw in this match...
Why does he run Grape Shot in the sideboard? When in my list, obviously... I'm not going to question every little difference, and it's really interesting to see our main board is pretty much exactly the same, but our sideboard is quite different. I ran Xantid Swarms, which is what Sarah's got. Xantid Swarms are really cool.
So there has been a change since
Grape
then.
Shot.
There's been a big change since then, and that change...
It was a while ago that I played it.
Yeah. That changes that Miracles is out. And the only reason that the Storm decks were running green was for Abrupt Decay. Because it was the one answer to the counterbalance that actually basically usually locked them out of the game. So what happens is when Miracles is gone, you don't have to run Abrupt Decay. So you don't run your Tropical Island, and you change your sideboard from...
Because he still had Trop, though, I thought.
Yes, so that would be an incorrect list.
Right.
So...
Because what's he using the green for?
I think it's likely that it's a tide over, so... A lot of people are still running these old lists, realizing they took a Abrupt Decay, but haven't realized that they've still got the Trop in there. And they don't need the
green. So there you go. There's an answer to if you guys were wondering why it's running 4-color. It's not a 4-color deck. It's a blue-black deck. Black for the business, blue for the cantrips,
Splash one Volk.
Splash of Volk for Past in Flames, and maybe Empty the Warrens, I guess. But it also splashed 1 green, and that was entirely for sideboard, as Sarven said, Abrupt Decay, and Xantid Swarm.
Yeah. And so you can just, since you're not running green anymore, you don't have to run Abrupt Decay. That means you can drop Xantid Swarm for something else that does the same thing. Like essentially Duress. Duress does the same thing, right?
I guess. I really like Xantid Swarm.
So this is a hand with a Cabal Ritual, a Ponder, and a couple of other spells I didn't quite catch at the time. But he is keeping 7, right? So that's kind of where you want to be. The Belcher deck does obviously mulligan a little bit more frequently because it wants to go off turn 1. And Sarah's doing the correct thing here of just trying to mull into a powerful broken turn 1 and say, you can't even leverage a single Duress or Cabal Therapy on me.
That's right. Although it gets tricky because it also wants a critical mass.
True.
So it gets to a point where...
She could make a bunch of gobbos and then bash. Sometimes you just make 10 of them and just beat face twice. All right, empty
you
the
don't
Warrens.
need that many. I mean, each storm trigger for Empty the Warrens creates 2 goblins, so you like storm for 3. You got like spell, gobbos.
10 of them is enough, right?
You got 6 gobbos there. 6, 12, 18. They're going to probe themselves. Yeah. That's it. 3
in most matchups, that's viable, but against Storm, it's like, oh, I only kill you in 3 turns. It's probably not ideal.
Chucking a Lotus Petal in, mate.
Yeah. So Sarah's going to 6, is that right? Let's see,
5 now?
5. Oh, yeah. Okay, so 2, 3, 4, and 5, yeah. So it's very hard to leverage a hand of 5 when you're in a deck that needs that critical mass. But Scry in this format is very good. All the Eternal formats, Scry is amazing. So was that a Xantid Swarm?
I think it was Wrists.
Yeah, I saw Mono Wrist. Okay, Wrist Study is what we just did just then. So now we get to see Cabal, Ritual, Ponder, Rain of Filth,
land heavy, gas heavy.
Petition.
This is one issue I found when running Storm, though, is you see like a land heavy hand and a gas heavy hand, and it's actually not that good. Like you see like 3 or 4 lands and then Dark Petition ad nauseum, but you really want to wait till turn 5 to cast those spells? No. So you have to have a Dark Ritual to cast those spells? Yes. So then, do I want a hand that's got 4 lands and has to have Dark Ritual to cast the rest of it? Yeah. No. So this is not quite that extreme, but
no, he's basically just going to go turn 1 Ponder, try and shape the hand,
gas, yeah,
and then turn. I mean, he can go off turn 2. He can make 10 goblins, right, and pass. I assume he brought in Empty the Warrens, but
how do you make that assumption?
That's a good point. I literally always bring in Empty the Warrens, and I forget that that's not a
See,
not typical.
Yeah, people always bring in Empty the Warrens. Sar's playing from that old school where... Oh, there's Anti-Swarm on Sara's side. But Sar's playing from that old school life where you just assume they have some kind of hate for you ad nauseum. So you bring in Empty the Warrens.
He's got it in the main anyway, so that's fine. But yeah, you can make 10 of them. That'll be fine. With that hand, you can make 10 on turn 2, right? So, or you can make 8 on turn 2. Probably not ideal. He wants to make 10. You don't want to give him an extra whole additional turn just because he didn't deal 2 more life. So here we go. Just go for the Underground Sea.
Why did Sara side in his Anti-Swarm?
I think a lot of the time people look at blue and they assume that you've got Force of Will. Obviously, Ant doesn't have Force of Will. She knows it doesn't have Force of Will, but what she does know is that it has blue and can support Flusterstorm. So it's possible that she expects a Flusterstorm.
Well, he's got a Flusterstorm in there, but would you side in Flusterstorm? Because the last thing you want is them to just go Char Belcher and then...
True, but it's a piece of interaction. It's a piece of interaction. It is what it is. I mean... It's not ideal.
So we talked a lot about Xanted Swarm. For those who don't know, it's a 0/1 flyer that when it attacks, once it's attacked, your opponents can't cast spells for that turn. So if you're playing a combo deck, you attack, go to second main, and then it silences them. And it lets you silence each turn, because I'm sure you guys might know of like something like Orm's Charm or Silence itself, which costs you a card. The Xanted Swarm, you can just keep doing it every turn. And keep silencing them in your turn. So it's fantastic against Force of Will, etc. And the reason it's good in these decks is because obviously no one's siding in creature removal or even keeping their creature removal against a combo deck like this or like Storm when it used to run Xanted Swarm. So they essentially can't get rid of it. And because it's got flying, you get to swing over a lot of ground critters. And if they do have a Delver out, you just wait until you want to go off, swing with Xanted Swarm, silence them, go off without being interrupted by a Force of Will.
On a ratio, how often would you say that you would swing in with Xanted Swarm just to put the fear in them?
Oh,
the fear.
You got to put the fear in them.
I'd say 10 out of 10.
You've got to put the fear in them.
I'll always swing in, even if obviously if they got no creatures. That's what I mean. Like you just go in. You just go in with the Xanted Swarm and say,
it's the same.
Make them scared.
It's the same thing with like swinging into blockers that won't trade, and they're like scared to block because they think you have something.
Yeah,
and you might as well just do it.
Yeah.
But the other thing is if you don't do it, and if they do block, but if you don't do it, then the one turn you do swing, they go, okay, now he's definitely got something.
Yeah. Now, when you've got Cabal Ritual in hand, I would 100% vote to put Dark Ritual in the correct graveyard order into your graveyard, because obviously. See, he's just counted up his graveyard. He's just neglecting the fact that the Dark Ritual is actually in the graveyard too.
No. So what's he done? So he's using Dark Ritual to count his black mana?
Now he's counting it, yeah. So he's using the Dark Ritual to count the black, which is risky, because if you miscounted and forgot that Dark Ritual is in your graveyard, you might not cast your Cabal Ritual.
Isn't it funny that all these Storm players have all these different ways of doing it, and I think just having a uniform way that you do every single time that lets you do it right is the best way to do it.
Definitely.
Whatever works for you, as long as you keep it the same.
That's it. So, does he have a deterministic win here? Because he just get... he doesn't have a red source to get Past in Flames, so... Because otherwise, I mean, a Past in Flames win here is very easy.
You can find LED... Oh, no. If he's got LED...
I believe he incorrectly cracked the Lotus Petal for black, because if you crack it for red here, you just
that's right.
You just tutor for Pass in Flames, flashback those things, flashback the tutor, and it's a deterministic win.
Yep, I think you're right, mate. Pass in Flames is where it's at. It's such an expensive spell, but guess what? Ant has a huge amount of unfair mana, so it can get there. You got to be careful.
That's it. So here, given that he did crack the Lotus Petal for the wrong color mana, and he has nothing in hand, and he's got a tutor spell on the stack, basically, searching, and he's going to have 3 more mana in them.
Is he just going to go for
ad nauseam what do you find? It's so risky. I really hate these ad nauseam plays when you don't need to, because a Pass in Flames would have just been the crack Lotus Petal for red, search for Pass in Flames, cast a Pass in Flames, and go for it, right?
Yeah.
Would he have had the right number of mana though?
Well, he had 4 black, and now he's using 3. I assume he got 3 off the Dark Petition, but that takes him to 6.
He was meant to go up. He was meant
so
to
he should have
go
gone up
to
to
7.
So he should have 2 black.
Yeah. So that's why the Past in Flames would work, because you'd still have enough to flash back your ritual from the graveyard.
Unless he's got 1 black and he's still got red in.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not sure. But look, here's another interesting ad nauseum we get to see. Even if it wasn't correct, I think it's really cool to see it. That's a Cabal ritual, I think.
Yep, Cabal ritual. Issue is, if he doesn't flip 2 Lotus Petals, then it's going to be pretty stuck in his hand.
Well, Infernal Tutor's a good one. He's definitely got the Storm. He doesn't need to worry about the Storm.
Storm's not a problem.
At this point, for him to even find tendrils, even if he finds it
But that's
in the
what
most
he wants, their Lotus
streamlined way.
I say Black Lotus, but it's
It's
it's basically Black Lotus in this deck. So,
well, you're right. He wants petals because he wants. He's stopping there, yeah. Because he can. I guess he can. LED, but now what?
The issue there is that you LED.
Rain of Filth.
Rain of Filth
this turn.
Yeah, the Rain of Filth was already in.
Oh, I missed the rain. There we go.
Then 100% the Past in Flames path would have been deterministic.
5 black. Yep. So he's pretty good here. 5 black. The Rain of Filth's good actually. So.
Yeah.
And that's red, right? He wants
basically
red.
A Dark Ritual.
He wants red off that, surely.
Well, he can just go for a linear tendrils play here, right?
I guess so, yeah.
But he needs to show how much mana he has to make it easier for us to see. So yeah, he can't go for tendrils, right? Because he's only got 3. He has to go for Past in Flames. No, this seems really cumbersome.
So
that dice on the board is that is 3 mana from Lotus.
Well, he can't go
Diamond. So
he had 5 from the Cabal Therapy.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, from Cabal Ritual. So he Cabal Ritualed, right?
Yeah, that's awkward.
He Cabal Ritualed and had 5, and then cracked LED, so he had heaps of mana.
Yes, yeah. So it's just the mana on the board that's not represented.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, it should be enough, right? But yeah, it's always useful to use those tokens. So that's a nice Caleb Scherer token on the end there to count Storm. You can also get the same kind of types of tokens, or even just a card like a black card or a swamp or something to represent the black mana that you put your dice on.
People use different colored dice, like green dice for green mana, blue dice for blue mana, black dice for black mana, etc. And then some random gold dice for Storm. There's another way to do it.
That's perfectly fine. Only issue is you can't read it on camera.
Oh, don't do that.
Yeah. So just
on camera.
Yeah. So that's likely that he was tracking it that way. So then he has to use big dice and doesn't have the cards to put it on. But either way, very interesting in terms of seeing 2 combo decks that have the ability to just go off and kill you. And it's really all about who leverages the way their hand happens to be shaped. Yes, and Sara did mull to 5.
Trust us, Sarah's deck can definitely do some damage.
Oh yes,
very,
on turn
very
1,
early. Yeah.
Consistently on turn 1. It was a pretty poor run this time, but it is what it is. That's magic.
Well, we're Adelaide Eternal, guys. Thanks very much for watching. We've still got more coming, so stay tuned. See you later.